This episode is called Backseat Driver, and it's about ways that we avoid responsibility for and control over our own life trips. It's a solo episode, just little old me, Dana Sutton, the Life Trip Coach. Welcome to the very first full episode of Life Trippin. I did a prequel a couple of months ago called Trippin' the Life Fantastic, which offers more background about me and the podcast. But very briefly, here's what I'm hoping to do. First, have fun with metaphors about journey, travel, life trippin', etc., because I never met a four I didn't enjoy. Second, share questions, lots of questions, of the open-ended variety, the kind that invite you to consider new ways to see or think about your life. Third, to promote life coaching as a way of helping us make the most of our life trips, and ideally to help listeners start coaching themselves. The more you ask yourself open-ended questions, the more possibilities and options you start to see. And fourth, share wisdom and insight from some of the great people that I know. Episodes will mostly alternate between ones like this, a solo effort, and interviews or conversations with friends. Check the website for a list of some upcoming episodes, www.lifetrippin.com. Now, I remember a family vacation we took when I was young, when we stopped at one of those touristy stores where they have stuff kind of like Cracker Barrel has. And I found and bought with my own money. Now, I don't remember exactly how old I was, but I figure I must have been at one of those really annoying ages to have done this. 10, 11, when you first start to think you know everything. I bought my very own backseat driver's license. I took it out to the car, filled in my name below the line that said it was issued by the state of confusion, and then pulled it out at the very first opportunity in order to justify my decision or input about, who knows, where to eat lunch, when to stop for a bathroom break. I kind of feel like my mom might have set me up with a question like, "So where's your backseat driver's license?" But that sounds too good to really be true. It's the kind of thing that only really happens in our jaded memories. I am reminded again of the original Vacation film in which crabby old Aunt Edna, is it weird that I didn't have to look up her name, joins the trip for a little bit and complains about every possible thing from the back seat. There's an expression I used to hear when my parents played cards that reminds me of this too. Someone who wasn't even playing the game would sometimes look over a player's shoulder at their cards and offer advice. Kibitzing, they called it, and they frowned upon it. So-and-so was a terrible kibitzer, they would say. Card players hate kibitzers, though some of them are kibitzers. By the way, that's a fun word to say. Try it. Kibitz. I think it's a Yiddish word, kind of a Jewish patois. Now, honestly, Dana, who doesn't like to share advice, right? I mean, we feel valued when we can offer insight or wisdom from our own experiences. But there is a pretty big difference between advice offered on request and that given because we can't really keep ourselves from sharing. The truth is that we all start out in the back seat. And I'm not necessarily talking about conception here. I learned a lot about how to drive and how not to drive from my parents, both literally and metaphorically speaking. I recall a regular sense of tension in the car between my aggressive driving dad and my more cautious mom. And I can also recall some of both the excitement and the fear when I finally got behind the wheel of a car after getting my learner's permit. And I especially remember making a couple of mistakes, including grinding the side of my parents' car against a telephone pole because I was too anxious to make another driver turn onto my street first so I had room to turn onto his. My folks were remarkably calm about it, so much so that I think I wondered for a while if Invasion of the Body Snatchers was real. But in the end, what a blessing that was. They had clearly been prepared for such mistakes, knew that there were inherent risks in putting a 16-year-old boy behind the wheel of a 2-ton piece of machinery, even knew, I suppose, that the potential risk was pretty high, that I or someone else could have been injured or even killed. And like my wife and I have done with our own sons, they probably just tried not to think about it too much, because they and we knew that preventing this step of independence might have consequences beyond our understanding. In the end, in other words, even the risk of death wasn't too much to outweigh the rewards of freedom, responsibility, and independence. Now, in a different episode, I'll focus on being a passenger and how to know if and when that is what you really want. Here, I'm talking about ways that we attempt to influence or control others without having or taking any real responsibility for the outcome. So, if you think you know someone, or you think you might even be someone who kibitzes, who offers advice to others, who wants to make decisions for others without experiencing the consequences of those decisions, well, here are some ways to know for sure. You might be a backseat driver if you are over 18 and literally ride in the back seat most of the time. Maybe you don't even have a driver's license despite having no condition that would prevent it. Unless, of course, you live in a big city with a great public transportation system, which I salute you for using, and where driving is super expensive and crazy stressful. You might be a backseat driver if you feel resentful toward your parents, your spouse, or any other authority figure who doesn't seem to respect your input. You might be a backseat driver if you have dreams that never seem to come any closer to reality. Someone else is always cautioning you about the risks, and you become convinced that those risks outweigh any possible rewards. You might be a backseat driver if you mostly wear clothes, listen to music, or eat food that someone else chooses for you. You might be a backseat driver if you watch a lot of reality TV and start talking about the actors as though they were acquaintances or friends to whom you really want to give your advice. So how did this happen? What might have led you to feel like a backseat driver on your own life trip? Chances are that someone, usually one or both your parents, have made most of your big decisions for you because A, they were trying to protect you from pain, from the possible consequences of any bad choices you might make, or maybe they were really trying to protect themselves from their pain by shielding you, or B, they had their own control issues, and making decisions for you helped them feel more in control of their own lives, or perhaps some combination of both of those things. But ultimately, they kept making those decisions for you, or others did, because you didn't make them for yourself. Whether because of your very own understandable fears, or simply because no one helped you transition into control and responsibility for your own life. So what now? This is the point in a coaching process that we just say, it is what it is. Things are the way they are, and we don't yet have time machines to let us go back and change them. So what else is possible? And that, by the way, is the Swiss Army knife of coaching questions. What else is possible that I'm just not seeing right now? Here are a couple of additional questions, a little bit more specific, to try to build on that one and on the awareness that it can bring. What are some ways you might begin to imagine a transition toward taking control of your life trip for yourself? Actually, start to make a plan. And this, by the way, is what I call an invitation. No obligations in making a plan. Just try it and see what happens with your energy. That alone will tell you a lot. What would an increased level of independence look like for you? Not for anyone else, but for you. Getting a job, a license, living on your own, paying your own bills, cooking, shopping, buying your own clothes. Make a list and see which things seem most doable. And once you take some small steps, use that positive energy to build on your successes. Allowing yourself to dream big is a way to connect with your heart, and making plans connects with your head. So, both in one question. What would it feel like, heart, and what steps would it take, head, to get to a goal? How much more enjoyable and meaningful might your life trip be if you got even partway there? The truth is that there may be some very good reasons why you aren't as much in control of your life as you might wish. One that occurs to me is health. If you have a condition that requires constant vigilance, seizures with medication, diabetes that requires dialysis, such things will shape the outline of your independence. You're literally dependent on certain things for your survival. But you know what? All of us are. It's just more obvious for some people, harder to hide or try to deny, and many of us want to do exactly that. As I see it, total independence is a myth. Except maybe for Tom Hanks in Castaway. But even he had Wilson. If you are seeking total independence, you might want to look into what people like Brené Brown says about vulnerability, which is kind of the opposite of independence. Or you could wait for my upcoming interview with my friend Gail Greenslade-Ely, in which we spend a lot of time talking about vulnerability and its costs and benefits. Total independence, for me, equals total isolation. Not needing anyone equals not being needed. And what are some ways that you like being needed? And what's an ideal balance of need for you in a relationship? How much of your own need are you willing to risk to another person? Well, I lost my backseat driver's license many years ago. That sounds kind of bad. I just realized like maybe I was backseat driving under the influence or something. But somehow it just didn't seem as useful after I got my front seat one, and I kind of lost track of it. But the instincts have come back from time to time. With my own kids, for example. I mean, helicopter parenting is not just a river in Egypt. What about you? What triggers your backseat driving instincts? And how might being aware of those situations help you make conscious decisions rather than just reacting in the moment? Well, if you'd like some coaching help to practice for your driving test, to start taking more control of your trip, let me know, would you? One of my goals for this podcast is to do some actual coaching to help listeners get how it works. So if you let me record and at least consider allowing use of a session, I'll give you some free coaching in return. Contact me at dana@lifetrippin.com. Our theme music, which I love, is Road Trip by Phil Rivas, used on a Creative Commons license. And don't forget to check out the Life Trippin website for information about guests, upcoming episodes, and more ways to contact me, Dana Sutton, the Life Trip Coach. Go to www.lifetrippin.com. And until next time, keep on trippin'.